Oh, so true. Thank you very much. Offering basket. There. I'm identifying where the offering baskets are. There.
welcome you.
Do it again. Welcome to First Unitarian Church. We're so glad to see even a few people here in person, and equally welcome those whom we can't see because they're watching from home. We do have a few announcements. First involves the annual meeting. Our congregation's annual meeting will be held this spring. It will be in person, tentatively, depending on COVID status. Please set aside May 22nd, 2022, at 1 p.m. at First Unitarian Church of Toledo for a discussion of our budget and further plans for the building, fellowship, programming, and religious education for children and adults. Part of the planning for the annual meeting will be the work of the nominating committee, considering who among the congregation could be asked to serve in leadership roles. Your vote as a pledging member at the annual meeting is important. If you're not comfortable in person, we would encourage you to use the proxy voting process for people who are not able to attend the meeting. Now is the time for courageous change. That's the theme for the 2021-2022 Guest at Your Table campaign. Along with today's order of service, you may have received a brief introduction to the UUSC and to this year's guests. If you didn't, look for it in the lobby after you leave. The Stories of Hope brochure is on order so that very soon you can read more about our guests and their justice activities. In the lobby. If your family enjoyed using the collection boxes in the past, you can make your own with scissors, glue, an empty cereal box, and a template picturing this year's guests at your table. I have those. Watch for the FYI and church notes during the next 3 weeks. I will be providing the internet location of these and other related topics from Guest at Your Table and instructions on how to donate. Yeah, I think Mickey's next.
I do have an announcement. Can you all hear me? Good. So 2 things. I've spoken with Reverend Tim a couple weeks ago and a few of you, but I'll be stepping down as music director at the end of my typically contracted time, so usually around May. I'll still be around. My hope is that giving plenty of notice will allow for we'll find a great transition and we'll find a great candidate and facilitate a smooth transition. I'm really grateful for the church and for everything you all have given me in this role. Some of y'all know I've been working on a doctoral degree from BGSU. I completed the coursework and I still need to write the book. In October, I also began a full-time position with the Toledo Alliance for the Performing Arts. And as much as I would love to stay on directing in a leadership role after May, my current schedule isn't sustainable for my health or the quality of my work. So having said that, I know there's a lot to juggle for the next few months, and I want to assure you that I'm here and I'm helping. Our spring music series currently includes myself, guests, congregation members, performances, and we're hopeful to incorporate some more community sings, possibly as part of interviewing process, but also as Omicron surge settles down, we'll be prepping for our all music service on April 10th. So again, I'm here, Derek's here, we'll be around. I'm hopeful we can find a great fit for this role, and I am incredibly grateful for our church community. Thanks.
And we're sorry to see Nikki step down, but at the same time, very much we understand the needs of getting the dissertation done and having to set aside just about everything else. And we know that you'll still be in Toledo at least for a while, so we hope
We're
we'll
around.
see you as a civilian later on as well. Thank you. Okay. And now let's turn to Carrie for our opening words.
This by Gary Kowalski. It is the day before an election as I write these lines, and whatever the outcome, I will be glad when it's over. Some will be elated by the results, and others will feel dejected, but regardless of who wins or loses, our world will still be broken and suffering from ills that government is powerless to cure. Our lives will still be chaotic and in need of tranquility. Grief and loss will continue to haunt us. We will still face the challenge of finding meaning and a faith that can sustain us through tough times. Campaigning in America often carries messianic overtones, and politicians collude in the drama by puffing their biographies to mythic proportions. They make big promises, but no new administration can deliver friendship, peace of mind, personal integrity, or a sense of self-worth. Finding the qualities that make life worth living, building them into our daily lives, and passing them along to our children will continue to be our personal responsibility, regardless of who controls town hall, Congress, or the White House. Voting is important, but there are many other ways in which we can exercise power in our own lives and influence the world for the better. Self-government, after all, begins at home with how I treat my neighbor, relate to my family, care for my community, and how I work and play. Hope for the future depends less on who gets elected than on our ability to exercise our own power for good.
And as Carrie lights the chalice, I have these words by a minister who most of us know, coming from our congregation, Jamie Yandel. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope in moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown. We light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze, knowing our strength as a prophetic and powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call of love. And now, if you would join me in reciting the covenant of this congregation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now for our opening hymn, it's number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
It's the story time in our service. Today's sermon is going to talk about religion and politics. So, in this time for all ages, I'm going to tell you a little bit about somebody who was very important in American politics and in our Unitarian religion. His name is William Howard Taft, and he was President of the United States for one term from 1909 to 1913. He was one of 8 U.S. presidents from Ohio, and the most recent. There have been 4 Unitarian presidents: John Adams, John Quincy Adams, Millard Fillmore, and William Howard Taft. Taft isn't one of the people who we first think about when we think about presidents. There were a few things about his time in office that might be interesting, though, and that don't have to do with politics. Did you know that he was the first president to own a car at the White House? Before him, presidents traveled around Washington with a horse and buggy. He also liked fresh milk. And he had a cow named Mooly Wally living on the White House lawn. When Mooly Wally stopped giving milk, Taft got another cow named Paulin, and Paulin was the last cow to have the White House lawn as her pasture. Taft was a large man, and when he was president, he had a 7-foot-long bathtub put in the White House. It might be more important to some of you that when we go to a pro baseball game, some people say it's because of Taft that we have the 7th inning stretch. One time he went to a baseball game, and in the middle of the 7th inning, he stood up to stretch. Since he was the president, everybody started doing that, and we still have the 7th inning stretch today. One of the more important things about William Howard Taft is that 8 years after he was president, he became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the only ex-president to be that high judge. As for his religion, Taft was a lifelong Unitarian, and he was active in the church. He was one of the people who founded the National League of Unitarian Laymen, and he was named honorary president of that while he was U.S. president. 2 years after he left the U.S. presidency, He became president of the National Conference of Unitarian and other liberal Christian churches. And he was also vice president of the American Unitarian Association from 1916 to 1922. What I'd like for you to remember is that Unitarian Universalists can live their religion and they can be leaders in the world. We can take our values to others by working with them.
And in that spirit, our centering music today is number 1008 in the green, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of a sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place.
Please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. We learned some sad news on Friday that John Davis, a member of this church, died on Friday. We're not certain about arrangements for the memorial service. We think they will be March 19th. We're not sure where the service will be. And of course, during this time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer, we all have sorrows, we have joys. There are concerns that we have, and there are celebrations too. We think of all the vast spectrum of human existence and our place among people in this world. On this President's Day weekend, our words for the meditation, contemplation, and prayer are written by Luke Stevens Royer, written for the presidential election in 2016, and this is called Prayer Ballot. I walk in as on pilgrimage. The altar cloths are red, white, and blue. The ushers are the women who have been running these things, who have been running everything since before I was born. I'm handed the ballot like a scroll, because the questions seem that important, ancient and modern, of what my God and country ask of me. Who? Who for commissioner, mayor, president? Who for District 8, Ward 7 school board? Who will do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly? I make my mark with at least a shred of hope that something good will come of this. And regardless, I remember, the world won't be destroyed entirely by this. The world won't be saved entirely by this. Marking my vote is like kneeling in prayer, because neither will accomplish anything right away. But the purpose of both is to remind me of my deepest hope for the world that I'm trying to help create. So I rise from prayer and turn in my ballot and remember the who is me and us and we the people. And again, I set to the task that is mine: justice, mercy, humble service in my small corner of the world. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
As this is our annual social justice service, in place of the reading, I invite Phil Zepp to come up and speak about the Social Justice Committee.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Phil Zepp, and I'm representing our church's Social Justice Committee. We act as coordinators as well as supporters of social justice activities. Our committee distributes monies that our membership has pledged towards the kinds of activities most Unitarian Universalists believe on and support. For example, our church helped organize a neighborhood program many years ago to assist the homeless, the unemployed, and the underemployed in an outfit called Focus in the Old West End. They have subsequently merged with Beach House, but we're still part of that. Churches along Collingwood work to serve that neighborhood, and we still do through a fundraiser luncheons, auctions, and other events. And we help families of Focus or Beach House with gifts for children at Christmas, along with other needies. Then we have Woody and Judy Troutman, who helped organize the Multi-Faith Council of Northwest Ohio, and we continue to support their efforts to stop the hate campaigns, interreligious dialogue, and area compassionate activities. And we have helped with meals for the homeless, helped stock the food pantry on the pole in our front yard of the church, collect food goods for the area food bank, and we're supporters of climate change programs, some via supporting local and state legislation. Our committee also includes green sanctuary efforts in our church building, such as solar panels on the roof, and operations such as recycling. And we have a community garden each year, as well as tree planting, butterfly plantings. We support the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee through the Guest at Your Table efforts each spring. And we are represented on UUJO, which stands for the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ohio, which are social justice actions primarily in the Columbus area. State legislation that concerns justice activities. We also work to campaign to register voters with UU the Vote and get out the vote efforts at campaign times. We support also teachers and students at the Arlington Elementary School. There is much to do. We always need more help, and especially your help. There's always something that we could be doing. We just need you volunteering. Our committee includes Judy Troutman, Karen Porter, Carrie Baum, Chris Stockwell, Luann Bilstein, Mary Souther, Kyle Lieber, Colette Cordova, and Mike Croak, among many, many others. And we welcome you to come and join any of our activities and come to our meetings and make suggestions. We're always open to more things that we can do with your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Every year, we try to have a social justice service where we highlight some aspect of social justice and give our congregation's social justice committee the opportunity to tell us a little bit about the work they do on behalf of First Unitarian, and to give a call as well for new volunteers to join the committee and work with us for social justice. We use the term beloved community on many Sundays, and good social justice is essential to building and becoming beloved community. One aspect of Unitarian Universalism is that activism in social justice is an element of our faith. We can't be separate and must be part of the promoting the inherent dignity and worth of every person, currently the first listed of our 7 principles. We must promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, our 2nd principle. And we work to meet the aim of our 6th principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Those are all social justice principles. Since our social justice service this year is on President's Day weekend, I thought we'd look at presidential social justice. Most presidents, you know, aren't known for being social justice leaders. They're politicians, after all, more often in search of compromise or their own party's favor rather than making change for the people. There are a few exceptions to that, though. I think of Lyndon Baines Johnson and his work for civil rights in the 1960s. He came to office when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and LBJ carried JFK's intentions for better civil rights through the Civil Rights Act becoming law, and added even more to that with a Voting Rights Act. What I know about LBJ, in part from my time living in Austin, Texas for a while, near his home in the Texas Hill Country, is that he saw discrimination imposed on Black and brown people. And when he had the presidency, he worked for more opportunities for all. Another president with some social justice credibility is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Along with bringing the Depression to an end, in part by our gearing up the military-industrial complex for World War II, which is not the way we might prefer, but it was a time for America to be on the good side of a fight. He did a lot to bring better opportunities to the poor, but it was still largely a time of segregation. And let me bring Barack Obama into this group too. It's not because he was the first Black president that brings mention of a social justice presidency, but his work to increase affordable health coverage. Of course, he didn't go far enough for many of us. He didn't make some version of Medicare national insurance that we wouldn't have to pay for individually, but only through taxes. But he did find a way to make insurance accessible. And on his watch, though we saw him come around to the position after he was already in office, marriage between two consenting adults without regard to sex or gender was legalized. Those are just three. More presidents have good social justice aspects, and it isn't always with regard to the political party that's perceived to be more social justice tied. Much has been written about presidential social justice. A Sunday morning service isn't the time to be comprehensive or to point to a lot of resources. For most presidents who even tried to address social justice, I'd say there are gray areas in their portfolio. Part of it, as I said before, is that they're politicians working for compromise to have their packages passed. Another is that only limited things can be done by executive order. And the aspect of, I'll do this my first day in office, really only goes so far if that action is to endure. And remember that they're not just subject to voters. Some social justice actions could bring possibly a deciding majority of votes, but to campaign finance and the ones in need of powerful people leading a social justice charge usually aren't the ones with sufficient funds to support a candidate. So it gets back to the person and the principles they hold. For this Sunday morning's look at presidential social justice, I'll go back to the subject of this morning's story time and talk more about Unitarian and Ohioan William Howard Taft, a Republican. Feel free to do your own exploration of the other 45 United States presidents. And yes, for this talk, I used my favorite reference source, Wikipedia. When Taft was elected in the 1908 presidential election, he said that he wouldn't appoint African Americans to federal jobs with the thought that the exclusion would avoid racial friction. And he made only a few exceptions to that statement by appointing African American people in the North. He also removed some Black office holders in the South. Later on the Supreme Court, he supported racial segregation. Some say that it's Taft's actions that started the movement of Blacks away from his Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, and becoming Democrats. William Howard Taft was not known as a social justice reformer, but after he left office, he did work against war around the time of World War I through the League to Enforce Peace, even though earlier he had been the United States Secretary of War. And he later became a supporter of the United States-involved alliance in World War I. Maybe he was convinced of the line in Ecclesiastes, a time for war and a time for peace. In his presidential inauguration speech, spoken on March 4th, 1909, he said, "Our international policy is always to promote peace. We shall enter into any war with a full consciousness of the awful consequences that it always entails, whether successful or not. And we, of course, shall make every effort consistent with national honor and the highest national interest to avoid a resort to arms." Another aspect with a social justice tie is that when he was the Solicitor General, the top U.S. lawyer before the Supreme Court, Taft established a U.S. government policy called confession of error, which enabled the Supreme Court to concede or lose a case that had been won in a lower court, but the government's lawyer thought it should have been lost. Taft used that confession of error to reverse a murder conviction, social justice as life or death. When he was a civilian governor of the Philippines, which was under U.S. control after the Philippine-American War, Taft worked for Filipino self-government. And in his inauguration speech, he spoke about Asian and white American racial conflict, primarily related to immigration. "We must take every precaution to prevent, or failing that, to punish outbursts of race feeling among our people against foreigners of whatever nationality who have by our grant a treaty right to pursue lawful business here and to be protected against lawless assault or injury," he said. But that position on Asians didn't seem to apply for racial equality for Blacks in the United States, as I mentioned earlier. His inauguration speech seemed to promote racial equality, but the ways he advocated haven't held up, such as limiting the vote to educated people. "I look forward with hope to increasing the already good feeling between the South and the other sections of the country," he said in his inauguration speech. I'll point out, not that it changes anything, that this was just 44 years after the end of the Civil War, and less time since Reconstruction went awry in favor of white supremacy. Continuing the quote, "What I look forward to is an increase in the tolerance of political views of all kinds and their advocacy throughout the South, and the existence of a respectable political opposition in every state, Taft said. Even more than this, to an increased feeling on the part of all the people in the South that this government is their government and that its officers in their states are their officers. The consideration of this question cannot, however, be complete and full without reference to the Negro race, its progress, and its present condition, he continued. The 13th Amendment secured them freedom. The 14th Amendment, due process of law, protection of property, and the pursuit of happiness. And the 15th Amendment attempted to secure the Negro against any deprivation of the privilege to vote because he was a Negro. The 13th and 14th Amendments have been generally enforced and have secured the objects for which they are intended, though even today many of us question whether those amendments have secured change. He continues, while the 15th Amendment has not been generally observed in the past, it ought to be observed. And the tendency of Southern legislation today is toward the enactment of electoral qualifications, which shall square with that amendment. Taft went on to advocate restricting the vote to people who are educated or have other qualifications, which would disenfranchise some whites as well, which Taft saw as proper. And personal independence ended up falling by the wayside, you might say. Quote, the colored men must base their hope on the results of their own industry, self-restraint, thrift, and business success, as well as upon the aid and comfort and sympathy which they may receive from their white neighbors of the South. Taft said that the 15th Amendment and state statutes limiting who can vote is a great protection to the Negro. Taft spoke well of Black advancement since the time slavery was legal in the United States, but in a way his language was florid while reality was rotten. The Negroes are now Americans, Taft said. Their ancestors came here years ago against their will, and this is their only country and their only flag. They have shown themselves anxious to live for it and to die for it. Encountering the race feeling against them, subjected at times to cruel injustice growing out of it, they may well have our profound sympathy and aid in the struggle they are making. We are charged with the sacred duty of making their path as smooth and easy as we can. Any recognition of their distinguished men, any appointment to office from among their number, is properly taken as an encouragement and an appreciation of their progress. And this just policy should be pursued when suitable occasion offers. But he deferred to white supremacy in the community, saying that he wouldn't appoint someone in a place, quote, in which the race feeling is so widespread and acute as to interfere with the ease and facility with which the local government business can be done by the appointee to be of sufficient benefit by way of encouragement to the race to outweigh the recurrence and increase of race feeling which such an appointment is likely to engender. And Taft claimed to be removed from racism himself. Personally, I have not the slightest race prejudice or feeling, and recognition of its existence only awakens in my heart a deeper sympathy for those who have to bear it or suffer from it. And I question the wisdom of a policy which is likely to increase it. We might have moved forward from those positions on race, racism, and social justice. We Ohioans, we Unitarian Universalists, and those of us who are Republicans. But there's still so much to move toward, isn't there? I hope this look at William Howard Taft's social justice positions that even 100 years later aren't so far removed from the challenges all people face, make you more attentive to the need to advocate for social justice, to work for change, to live our first, second, and sixth principles as well as the other four, and a likely eighth principle on anti-oppression. One way to do that is to join with others in our congregation's social justice committee. Be a part of the church. Be a part of change. So be it.
It's now time for the offering. In person, there are baskets in the front, at the near end of the center aisle, and in the back near the exit doors or in the lobby. Those of you who are at home or in the week in between can go to uutoledo.org, click on Give, then click on Online Giving. You can also send through the mail to First Unitarian Church, 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614.
And now, to let you know what's coming soon, next Sunday at 9:45 a.m. on Zoom, Joe Moran will have a presentation on the history of the Multi-Faith Council of Northwest Ohio. And next Sunday's 11 a.m. service here in person in the sanctuary and on our Toledo Unitarians YouTube channel will be another entry in my ongoing series on Jesus viewed from my humanist viewpoint. This one is Jesus to Christ.
And coming very soon, you're welcome to stay after the service for social time. We normally call it coffee hour, but with the pandemic, we're taking a break from serving refreshments. But conversation is welcome. For our closing words, Go in Peace, Seeking Justice by Jim McGaw. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace seeking justice. I mean go in peace committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in the peace that is created when together. When together, we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace.
And now it is time for sending the flame. As Carrie does that, I have these words by Maureen Killeran, Daring Vision. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth.
Inside.
Let's walk out.
My stuff's up front, including my